Okay, so here's a nice MVP that was just created for the RiskMandate.ai. And this situation fundamentally is based on this whole idea that we, instead of risk accepting at the end, we actually accepting the risk right at the beginning, because the idea is that the risks already exist. Right? So basically, the flow is that what you have is the option to accept for a week, a month, a quarter, or a year, or you can basically, define it, right? Or you can ask for more data, right? But each of those has a specific set of actions. Like, if you accept for a week or a day, it's basically an incident. For a month, you have to have a project that funds it, etc. Right? So in this example, you have inbound files you can vouch for. This is like the idea of files, right? File security, right? You have detection depends on prior knowledge, i.e. new files are not detected. Agents now open the files, and AI makes novel malware shipped cheaper, right? So the idea here is that now, the agents can actually be attacked by files because they open it, right? And the idea here is that the risks, basically, when they are, for example, accepted, right, they need to be accepted for this period, and then they need to be accepted by the CISO, the IT, the CFO, the CEO, and the board, right? And it has that flow. So the idea here is we base this on facts, like how many, for example, in this case, files you have, agents, the spend cap that you have, agents can open files or not, and the whole sort of thing dynamic, and then how comfortable you are with your defenses. So this is kind of a scenario that we commit here, right? And then you start to look at basically the multiple ways that you can accept this, the multiple ways that how does it connect with the multiple providers, and we're still getting this service acceptance workflow. But the idea is that everything connects upwards, right? And basically what happens is this whole idea that the risks then connect up. And in fact, one of the things that we try to map here is to try to go like the five whys, right? The five whys. So a file that can, you can't vote for a file. That why does it matter? Because the text is a sexual behavior. That means the host black pages rich data in systems, confidential availability and loss, UK GDPR, and then material breach makes the board accountable. So you start to trying to find why do you go from this particular fact here to specific business risks, which is kind of what we start to map here. So we start to map the business risks that operate here and how they arrive there, right? So you start to have this graph, and in practice it kind of looks like this, right? So it's much nicer. So you got basically the twins define the objects that we have. The facts is the ones, the inbound files, etc. Then you have the conditions, and then the multiple risks that we have here, and basically and they start to connect with each other, right? And the idea is that eventually they hit the business risks and eventually they connect to the top. Right. So what's really cool about this is we actually can run. This is all serverless, runs on top of my vaults, but you can see that you got these facts, risks, business risks, stakeholders, incidents, and projects. And again, the idea is the project is how you actually map it, and each of these connects to each other. Right. So the project addresses the risk. The risk you could see here, for example, the risk links this particular risk. Leads to that one, escalates to this one, and he has a fact that he backs up, and this guy will connect to, for example, novel payloads connects to the business risk. The business risk will connect to the stakeholders. You can see the multiple stakeholders, and that's basically, and then that how they connect to each other, right? And then we actually have a database on the browser, which is really cool. Which basically means that we can basically operate like a graph. You can see, so you can actually run complex queries here, like for example, business register. So we got which risk connects to that one. So you can basically provide some really cool already queries, right? On here, all browser-based, all serverless, right? Basically, the database is in the browser, right? And then we're starting to connect in, and this also allows you to do a graph database. So you can actually see here that we actually have, this has RDF and SPARQL in the browser via RDF-JS, which is really cool. So basically, we actually convert the issues into this basically nodes and edges, and then we can actually map the data. We can even have a turtle data here. Because semantic web. So this is pretty cool, right? So this was actually a great way to start understanding the connections. You can see like semantic graphs, right? So these are all the triples here, right? And then you've got the business risks. So you get select by this, by business risks. You got direct escalation. So this is basically where you have a graph database that you can now run queries off, right? We experiment with multiple graph visualizations. Here's Cytoscape. Here's the Vis Network. This starts to be cool. start to see kind of the blast radius, how they connect, and actually this Explorer is actually even better. So here is where you start to see, look, here as you can see, the twin connects to this guy, which is the inbound, who raises this risk, inbound files, who escalates to this one here, who then escalates to the business risk there, and then is signed off by the exec, right? And what's cool about this is that means that, for example, I can look at the IT stakeholder and then see all the relationships amongst them. In fact, the idea is that this would actually be a bit more granular, right? So you can then start to understand really the business risk, and the business risk should be adapted to the functions. But it's pretty cool to already start to see, like, even the point of view, right? So which point of view do you want to see the graph, right? And you basically can start to connect the dots. So it's pretty cool, right? So that's fundamental this. And then, all this actually runs on top of the vaults, which is all client-side encrypted, which is really cool. So you got all the data here in the vault and all the different pages, and including all the issues, right? So this is actually the JSON files for each of those, right? Which is actually pretty cool, right? So you can see it connects to each other, and that's fundamentally each of the pages are here, and this is also has a lot of the data. So it's pretty cool, right? So that's the workflow. Again, very rough MVP, but it's starting to show the ideas of the risk mandate and the evolutions in how we're thinking about risks.